So many years ago,
Mm,
my wife had had enough of my negativity and I was miserable. I was negative. I was making her miserable. I was blaming her for why my life was not the way I wanted to be. And I just lost my job during the dot-com crash, two small children, crumbling from the inside out. And I asked God what I was born to do. Why am I here? And writing and speaking came to me. I wanted to inspire the way other people had inspired me. And I thought back to years past when I read books like Og Mandino and The Greatest Salesman and Richard Bach's Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions
mm,
and those kind of books that inspired me. And I wanted to inspire others. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And that began this journey of starting to write and speak. And my good friends to this day will tell you, I told them, hey, I'm going to be a writer and speaker. And they're like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And they laugh about it to this day because they're like, you know what? You just started doing it. And so at that point, I started a weekly positive tip because I started to research ways that I could be more positive because that's what I wanted to be. And so I started this positive tip. It was a newsletter. And I had 5 subscribers to my newsletter, my mother, my brother, my best friend from college. They were getting the newsletter whether they liked it or not. And Daniel actually was one of the early people who started getting the newsletter. He started reading that newsletter. I owned a Moe's Southwest Grill shortly after that at the time as a way to hopefully build that, make enough money that would allow me to then write and speak full time. And so I second mortgaged my home, $20,000 in credit cards, and everything we had, we put into this Moe's, not knowing if it was going to work or not. But that was the goal, make this restaurant work so that I could then write and speak. And so I'm sending this newsletter out every week and I start to write. I start to walk. I start to practice these thank you walks years ago that I talk about now. And I start to do those walks. And on those walks, different ideas would come to me. And I started this weekly newsletter sending out tips every week. And I would come back and I would just write these tips. And people started to read these tips and then share them. And then I started to get invited to do some speaking engagements. Different groups would reach out. I was reaching out to friends at that time saying, hey, I would love to come, speak to your group. I would love to come speak at, your event. And I got a lot of rejections. I got a lot of no's, but a couple of friends said, yeah, sure. Come and speak to us. And I remember reaching out to this one guy. His name was Ed Foreman. He's a famous speaker at the time. I found him online and I said, hey, I want to be a speaker like you. What do I do? And he said, speak. I'm like, speak? He goes, yes, just speak. Speak everywhere and anywhere. And when you do that, people will hear you. And if you're good, they will then refer you and you will get more engagements and it will grow over time. So that became my mission, just to speak everywhere and anywhere in order to share the message that I was writing about. I started this website, created a website, and it had speaking events, it had workshops, it had a news section, even though we had no news, but we put this website up. And I'm going a little bit ahead here because I think that was like maybe a year or two afterwards. I think it was after I met Daniel that we started doing this. And the way Daniel and I met was I had this Moe's and Daniel was reading my newsletter and he came in one day and he was selling indoor advertising. And so he said, I'd love to sell you this indoor advertising for your bathrooms, so you can make money in your bathrooms. I said, I think I want this design in my bathroom. I want really nice pictures and paintings. I don't think I want to sell advertisements. He said, are those nice pictures making you money? And I said, I like this guy. I like the way this guy thinks. And I don't even know if I did the indoor advertising, but I like the way he thinks. And I said, what we should talk more. He said, I'm really interested in what you're doing also as a writer and speaker. That's what I'm more excited about. And so we started talking about that and possibly working together. And I decided to go on a tour early on, even before the Energy Bus. I often talk about the Energy Bus tour, but I did a little tour even before that. And I needed to hire someone to help me with this tour. And I had the Moe's at the time, but I wanted to get out there and just start speaking anywhere I could. And Daniel was one of the choices that I was looking at in terms of hiring to help me with that tour. Another guy was named Jason Mudd. Remember Jason, Daniel?
yep.
And it was Jason Mudd or Daniel who I was looking at. And Jason had this big fancy PR company and Daniel was an indoor advertising salesman. But something told me to go with Daniel. And so I
Best
went with
decision of
him.
his life.
Yeah, best decision I ever made besides picking my wife. And Daniel was basically dialing for dollars. I was going to some of these cities and he would reach out and say, hey, John Gordon's coming. He's internationally known as the Energy Addict because the initial brand was Energy Addict. And so I was going to help people get addicted to positive energy. And so I was going to speak about positive energy and motivation and health and wellness. I was really into all of it. It was mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual energy. That's what it was. And so I was, doing that. And Daniel was basically calling each city, radio stations, TV stations, saying, hey, John Gordon's coming. He's coming to town. And some of these stations had me on. Some of the TV stations, radio stations put me on the air and brought me in because it was at the time, it was a lot easier back then to do that. And so I did that, came back, still had the restaurants, and then eventually wrote the Energy Bus. But before the Energy Bus, the important thing as a writer and speaker was I created my website as if. I built the website as if these things were already happening. I put it out there as if I was already doing it. I created a one-page overview marketing brochure, which is essential. And I still tell people to this day, create a one-page overview brochure of your speaking, of you and your speaking and your topic. Pick one topic right now that you want to be known for. So it's important to pick the topic and the brand that you want to stand for, be known for, and share. So you have this one-page overview. You have a website that's promoting you and your brand and your speaking. And then you have this one-page overview that you can then share with people via email, PDF, or even, giving it away to handing it to someone. And that's how I started. And I still tell people to this day, that's essential to have this, one-page overview, to have a website as if, build your brand, and then come up with your core topic, your core message that you want to share and get out there. And like I said, initially it was get addicted to positive energy. It was Energy Addict. But once I wrote the Energy Bus, I knew that was my core brand. And people often ask, how did it take off? Well, it didn't take off right away. I went on that 28 city tour that I talk about, city to city to city, sharing the message in the book. And we had, 5 people, one city, 10 people, another, 20, another. The most people we had were 100 people in Des Moines, Iowa. They thought Jeff Gordon was coming. That's why they showed up. Remember, I got home. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I had this vision to share the message every day. And it was a mission that I knew I was on. I knew it was the message that I wanted to share. So I had my core message. I had the brand that I wanted to put out there. And before that, I must say, it was rejected by over 30 publishers. So if you're a first-time listener, rejected over 30 publishers said no. Even my agent said give up. But I couldn't give up because I had the vision and mission. So kept on putting it out there. Finally, John Wiley and Sons agreed to publish the book. And so I remember it was, coming out really excited, but bookstores wouldn't carry it. And so I decided to go on that tour to hopefully get these bookstores to notice me and the world to notice me. I had to get out there. I had to put it out there. At the time, there was no social media really. So it was my newsletter, it was the book, and it was media, and it was me getting out there, one person, one city at a time, sharing this message. And so that's what I did initially with the Energy Bus, coming back, not knowing what the future holds, didn't look good from a tour standpoint, wasn't really successful. Jim Van Allen came on with me, who's, one of our lead trainers. He's heading our Positive Schools Initiative now, over 30 years old now. He went on that tour with me as like a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old, and we still laugh about it to this day. And, going like literally 5 people there, but I took the time to talk to those 5 people. I think this is important too. Took the time to talk to the 5 people, because even though 5 people were there, it was about impacting one person at a time. So I wasn't looking too far ahead to say, okay, I want to be this big writer and speaker. It was about impacting who was in front of me. And that still guides me to this day of how I do what I do and why I do what I do, to make a difference. It really is about the mission. I think a lot of times, people want to be a writer and speaker, and they want to be famous, and they want the big stage. They want the big event, but they're not willing to do all the work that it takes along the way to be successful. And what I love about my team of speakers now that I have is that they're a group of people who have done the work. Like I wasn't going to make it easy for them. They had to do the work to know what this business is all about, to know what it takes, to know if it's real for them or not, if they're really on a mission. And almost like Waffle House, when you join Waffle House, you actually have to start by sweeping the floors and mopping the floors when you join there. They make employees do that. They make managers do that. Major VPs of that company are still making eggs and breakfast at Waffle House all the time. So they have a humility to them. And I think that's important as well. So for us, that is what it's about, because that's in many ways what I had to do along the way. And honestly, that's what it takes. Like you have to really have a mission to do this work, because it's not easy. It looks easier from the outside, but you really have to be on a mission, and your purpose has to be greater than your challenges. Your vision has to be greater than your circumstances if you want to do this work. Daniel, if you have any other questions as we pause along the way, but I mean, I can keep going on certain things because there's,
I think it's good. I mean, to give people the context of the overview, and then we can, kind of go a little more micro into the things of, we get a lot of questions, daily from people wanting to know how John does what he does from writing and speaking standpoint. So one of the, big questions that we get is, John, how do you write books? Like, does the idea just come into you? What's your practice when you're actually sitting down? I know Catherine calls you the mad scientist, when it's book writing time, but share with them how that happens for you.
Yeah, from a book writing standpoint, I get an idea for a book, usually on a walk, those gratitude walks in the morning. And when I get the idea, I get a vision for the book. Training camp came to me on a drive to the airport after speaking to the Atlanta Falcons on the energy bus. And it came to me, I had a vision of a coach and a player, a mentor and a mentee teaching the winning habits that separate the best from the rest. And I knew, okay, I'm going to write this book and share these lessons along the way. So that's what started that. Each idea comes to me in a different way, but usually it will come. I'll have a vision for it. I sit down, I start writing. I write every morning when I'm writing a book. Each morning I get up and I start writing. If I look at social media, if I look at anything, email, I will be distracted. So I can't do that. I have to write and do first things first. And once I do that, I'll get into a flow. I'll take a break. I'll go for a walk. On this walk, I'll get new ideas and I'll write them down. I'll bring a pad with me, or sometimes I'll bring my phone and just shut the phone part of it off and just keep it as like a iPhone or whatever, an iPad kind of thing, or just whatever, a tablet. And as I'm doing that, I'll take notes with the ideas I have. I come back, I write some more, usually done by noon or 1. And then at night, I'll edit what I wrote. I'll review it, I'll edit it, and I'll get some new ideas, and I'll jot some ideas down when I'm doing that. And the next morning I get up and I start the process again. And so that's how I usually write a book, usually 3.5 to 4 weeks of writing a book. Then it goes to the publisher. When it goes to the publisher, it's then copy edited. So I'm not editing for copy and grammar. They'll do that as a publisher. They'll send it back to me. And then once I get it back, then I'll do some revisions. I'll get some new ideas. I'll change some sentences. I'll see what they changed. I'll either accept the change or not. And then we'll go through that process. It goes back again. Then I get a typeset set of pages where it looks like it's going to look in the book. And from there, I'm still able to make some edits and some changes, and new ideas sometimes will come during that time. Quotes will come, but you can't change too much at that point, but you can change a few things. You can't change multiple pages and paragraphs, but you can change some things along the way. And I've done that where something will come and it will be a whole new thing. And then it goes back again one more time, final revisions, and then the book gets set to be published. So that's sort of the process it goes through. It goes through several revision and editing processes along the way. First book I wrote, though, from a Fable standpoint, Energy Bus. And that was a book I wrote in 3.5 weeks. Never wrote a Fable before. And I just sat down, I started writing it. I had a few of the rules, like 2 or 3 rules, I think, at the time. And as I wrote, one led to the next, which led to the next. So eventually I had my 10 rules, because I knew I wanted to be the 10 rules for the ride of your life. So that's how that process happens from a writing standpoint. Everyone has a different process though, but that's how it happens.
I think it's important to note too, is that, as some are hearing this, you may not be in the position, where John is. So you've got a job and you're trying to be in the margins and figure out when you can write, because that's the big stumbling block for many. It's, I don't have the time. John's first few books were in that same scenario. He didn't go on a writing retreat. He was writing in the chaos of having little kids at home. And that's one of the big things. It's like, you've got to make the commitment and have the discipline to just sit down and write.
And Stephen King said, writers write. And so if you're a writer, you're going to write, you're going to make the time. And so you have to find your time, you make it a ritual, and you do it every single day when you're writing that book or writing that set of poems or whatever it is. You make sure you write every single day until it's finished. And so you make a ritual out of it. And I do think it's important to be committed to the process. And there has to be, like I said, a devotion to it. Like, if you're really devoted to it, it's going to drive your discipline. I think so often we have this idea, but as we start writing, we also have fear come up as well. And I think the key here is, well, I know the key here is not to let fear keep you from what you're meant to write. Don't worry about getting published. Just write the book. People always say, should I find a publisher first? No, write the book first. Write the first draft for you. Write the first draft for you. And then after that, you can edit it for the marketplace, but write it for you. And it might not be great the first draft. You think anyone has a great, perfect first draft? No, I think that's a mistake people make. They think it's supposed to be perfect right away, so they don't begin the process. They don't feel worthy. They feel like an imposter. No, you just make sure that you write what you're meant to write. In terms of, if you don't have an editor, if you don't have a publisher in that process, you can find an editor. You can find a friend who is great at editing and great in English. There are a lot of great friends that love to do this. You can find a local writer, a sports writer, a columnist, a newspaper writer in your local town that may be interested in editing your book. I don't know, Daniel may know how to find other editors as well.
I mean, a great way is just post something on social media and spell something wrong. You'll get those people immediately. They come, the grammar Nazis come out.
And I don't know.
I'm kidding.
Right. But you'll find people that will help you edit it. And again, there's a lot of people out there that want to do this, and you just got to put it out there. Professors at universities, community colleges. There's a lot of people that be willing to do this. And I don't know how much it costs. Daniel, do you know how much it costs to edit? And
it varies greatly depending on the caliber of the editor. But I mean, the point is, don't let the pursuit of perfection, on the first draft, because that's the stumbling block that stops so many. Time, I don't have it. 2, fear of trying to make it perfect right out the gate. It's like John goes back and rewrites entire chapters. I mean, it's never right the first time. And then I can tell you, I don't know any author that even when the book is published, most of them are like, I wish I could go back and change something, because you're always evolving, so it's like, let the work be the work in its form, but it's more important to get it out there than to try to be perfect and never get it.
And again, don't think you have to have a publisher first. Write the book first and say, okay, I have this. Now I can decide what I want to do with this. I may want to get it published. I may want to self-publish. And at that point, you at least have a product. You have something you've created that you can now do something with. So often we wait till we have a publisher and we never actually write it.
So that's a good opportunity now. And we can segue on the Hall's comment too, John. So talking about publishers. So a big question, is whether you go traditional published, and that's with a regular publisher, or to go self-published, and the pros and cons on that. So John, you want to tackle that one, of why you chose what you did and what you know about that?
Yeah, people have a dream that they're going to find a publisher, and the publisher is going to publish their book, get it out there, and make them famous. It's going to get in stores. It's going to get all over the place. It's going to go around the world, and it's going to become a huge hit. The publisher does not do that. It is the author that does that. It is you that does that. And so publishers are great with the support team to help you through the process of editing and revisions and printing and design and book cover. They help with all that. And I have a great group at Wiley that does that. I've been with Wiley all my books, except for the first 2 before the Energy Bus. And then once it was Energy Bus and Wiley, I've stayed with them ever since. I've gotten a lot of offers to leave for a lot more money, but I love my publisher. I love being able to write what I want to write. They give me the freedom to do that. So I've stuck with them, and they believed in me early on when all the other people rejected me. And so it makes me want to stay with those people. But from a publisher standpoint, they provide that support and that infrastructure. But in today's day, with all the great resources available, you can actually find Amazon to publish your book. You can find a lot of self-publishing outlets to publish your book that are really great. Some you have to be careful of that, and Daniel can explain more here, that they just cost too much money, and it's really about, I don't, there's some out there you gotta be careful of, but there's like a friend of ours has a self-publishing school, and he does a great job with that in terms of teaching about self-publishing and the platform and things like that. But the key here is deciding, am I going to try to get it published or self-publishing? Here's a big factor. If you can sell 10,000 books right away, then you should definitely, not even right away, but just say the first year, then you should probably self-publish, because publishers are looking for someone who has a platform that they can promote, that they can put out there, that the person will actually sell the book themselves. So publishers want people who could sell books. And if you're not sure if you can sell a lot of books, or they're not sure, then they probably won't publish you. Then it makes more sense to self-publish. Now, if you self-publish, if you can't sell 10,000 copies your first year, then you've made the right decision to self-publish, because a big publisher won't want you. And so the key is to say, do I think this has the potential to sell a lot of books? Does a publisher think it does? Do I have the platform to sell it? If not, you self-publish it, and you use that book to build your platform. So you use the self-publishing book to build the platform, your speaking and everything you want to do. As sales grow, a publisher will come to you and then want to publish your book. Once you sell 10,000 copies, a publisher will want to work with you. And then you'll have the choice at that point. Do I want to work with a publisher or not? If I work with a publisher, you make less money as an author. If you work with a publisher, your royalties could be anywhere between $1 and $3 a book. If you self-publish, you can make $8 to $12 a book when you self-publish. So you actually will make more money if you self-publish. There's more risk in terms of you're putting up the cost. With a publisher, they technically and usually give you an advance. The advance is money they give you to basically write the book and to get it done. And after it's written and it starts selling, you then have to earn your advance back before you can make royalty. So you don't get any money, you don't get any royalty until you pay the advance back to the publisher. Once they make their money back, then you make a percentage, a royalty percentage off of every sale of your book after that. If you self-publish and you put it out there, you start making money right away on every book sold, but you also have to recoup your investments for your editor, for the design, the cover, and the printing of the books that you first put out there. But again, with Amazon, you can actually sell electronic books right away. And they also, I believe, have print on demand services where they will print on demand. So there's not a lot of cost there as well. So these are things to factor. Any questions as we're going through this that's not making sense? Okay, I guess it's making sense, which is good. So publish or self-publish, key decision. If I was starting out today and I didn't have a platform, I would self-publish. I would self-publish the book, and I would use that book to then grow my platform. I'd create my website, I'd create my overview, I'd have my topic, and then I would have my book, and then I would really get that book out there and promote it. In essence, that's what I did with the Energy Bus, because with the Energy Bus, I was speaking on the Energy Bus. I had my book called The Energy Bus. So every talk was on the Energy Bus, and I was always promoting the book. And I would say for the first 5-6 years, that's all I really promoted was Energy Bus. Training Camp came out, which I promoted a little bit, and No Complaining Rule. But Energy Bus was my core focus, and I was promoting it at every talk. I was speaking about it every talk, and I think that's why it grew so fast, because the speech was on it, the book was on it. So the talk promoted the book, and then the book promoted the talks. So it became a flywheel where they fed each other. And that's important too, is to think about what's your core message, what brand do you want to share, what core message you want to share, and then you promote it, you promote it, you promote it, you talk about it, you talk about it, you talk about it, you share your book, you share your book, and then it just over time, the repetition. It's not sexy. It's a lot of repetition. And to answer and talk about what Ron and Beth were talking about earlier, publishers really aren't great marketers of books. So you need to know that. We got to go back to that for a second. They are not great marketers. It really is up to the author. Sometimes I think publishers are not in the business of selling books. They're so bad at it. It's really that bad. And I hear horror stories from so many different people who want to write books, think the publisher is going to magically sell their book, and they don't do a great job with it. So publishers want people who are going to promote their books, and publishers are not great at marketing, just so you know. It's up to you to market, promote through your talks and your books. I got to go backwards and tell you that in the beginning, I was scared to speak. I didn't want to speak. I honestly just wanted to write. But an early conversation with a publisher said, if you want to write, you have to speak to get your work out there. And that usually is the case. You write a children's book, maybe not as much. You write a thriller, a novel, maybe not as much. Something that gets taken on. There's always outliers, there's always exceptions, right? But even these famous authors that I meet that are writing thrillers and books like that, they also are always out there doing book fairs and events and book clubs, sharing their books out there to get them out there.
The a question, just a point of clarification. So publishing, Petra asked, just so publishing the book is getting the idea out of your head into paper, into the marketplace, or into the opportunity for marketplace. Marketing the book, very different than publishing the book. Marketing is a whole nother, deal. And that has to do, it's kind of all it's all the flywheel, because as we get into the branding aspects of it, and as you've heard, like with John, with the newsletter, it's like, you have to start building the audience every which way you can. And that's when, like, talking about the self-publishing aspect, it gives you a little more flexibility with the book too, because if you wanted to do things like give away copies, then you have a better financial opportunity to do that, because you can, you're not investing in a $20 book at retail, you're investing in a $3 book at your cost. Let me see we can go, John, you want to talk about launching a book? I mean, some of the things that we do now are very different than what we did then. And one of the things, many of you probably are part of launch teams that we've done for the books. I mean, that's a really big opportunity. But basically, whenever you're going to launch a book or anything, you're trying to create a splash. You're trying to get as many people, to read the book as possible, to be people who are going to tell others about the book. So looking for any opportunity that you can to do that, whether it's assembling friends, whether it's doing a book study, whether it's doing launch teams, those are things that we look at of what can we do that's going to corral the largest number of people in a very short window of time.
Sharing a sample chapter is always a great idea of your book. So you share a sample chapter to promote the book. Having a book website is key, or the book featured on your website is essential. So the sample chapter is great. Constantly sharing excerpts is great. Quotes from the book is very helpful to put out there. You probably see a lot of our graphics that we'll put out there when a book's coming out, a quote. Nowadays with social media, it's easier than ever to promote a book. You got Instagram, you have Twitter, you have Facebook. So putting your message out there and your book out there is key. Doing a free webinar when you have a book coming out is key. So you do a free webinar where people can sign up for the webinar, and that helps you build your list. Back to list. The number one thing I've done over the years, if you had to ask me, what's the number one thing you've done? It's my email list. Started way back when with those 5 subscribers, and it just would grow and grow and grow very organically, like really organically. And we would just have more and more subscribers over time. I've gotten so many speaking engagements from that list. We have a great loyal following from that list. And it's so funny because when we started the list, it wasn't about selling books. It was about sharing the value. Like the newsletter was I created the newsletter, put information out there to encourage people, to put all this, content that was in my head and to start sharing it. And a lot of the ideas in the newsletter became books. A lot of things I wrote about actually found its way into the material in my books. And so the newsletter was like an incredible way to just share value and add value and make a difference. And it's just funny that that's been our number one thing because it wasn't intentional. Now there's a lot of strategy around it, behind it, with a lot of people that know a lot more than we do about this. Like it's all about like newsletter marketing and all this. And even to this day, you'll probably notice we keep it very simple. Have the newsletter, still want to provide value. I still write it every single week, since 2002. Okay, talk about repetition, talk about flywheel, talk about there's no such thing as an overnight success. I think we have over 230,000 subscribers now. And so that's made a big impact. It's how we talk about our trainings and our workshops. So we're always sharing things that we're doing that people could sign up for. We don't want to be overly promotional, but we're doing this. You can sign up if you'd like. And so we still use our newsletter in that way. But for you, newsletter, essential, blog, essential to begin developing your following. And then as you have this newsletter, then you're promoting the book. When you're at events and you speak, you encourage people to sign up for your newsletter. So it's essential that you get more and more people to sign up. Everyone you meet, try to sign them up for your newsletter as you can start sharing information about what you're doing. You have a podcast, you want to have a newsletter to promote your podcast. A book, you want to make sure you're doing that. Podcast will help promote your book. Book helps promote your podcast. Again, create synergy about the things that you're doing and what you're offering. But going back to, we're sharing a lot of ideas now and how-tos. Your core brand has to be really clear to you about what you want to share, what you want to put out there, and what matters most to you. A lot of times when we start to write a book in the first place, we might have 3 books in our head. We might have 3 books that we want to do at once. And I find people get very cluttered. Just write the one book, the one message you want to share. What's the one thing that if you died tomorrow, I don't want to be morbid, but if you died tomorrow, what would you write today to share what you want to share? That's how I think about every book that I want to write. If I died tomorrow, what would I want to write now? And then you write it. When you're done, okay, what's the next one that I want to share? And if there's 3 books in you, you'll write one, you write the next one, you write the other one. And if you're meant to write more, you'll write more. But try to not write 3 in one, just write the one book. And what's the core brand, the core message that you want to share? Start with that core brand of who you want to be, of what you want to share, and ultimately what kind of impact you want to have. And think about that. That should drive your book, if that makes sense. Daniel, we'll get in some questions in the chat. Do you want to
Yeah.
ask me some
Roll
of
through.
those?
Yeah. I mean, some are pretty, so there's a question about social media and like when are better times to post. It varies. I mean, we find that like Sunday night's a really popular time. It varies though now. Like it really, mornings, evenings, depends on the platform. Instagram, Facebook, morning and evening. Sunday night. Twitter can be pretty much, all throughout the day. The thing that's funny is, or not funny, but ironic, is that you just have to remember that you're playing against algorithms, so like what John said about email, that's why email is still king. People say that, oh, email's dead, it was going away. John's got a huge social media platform, but we can send the same message out for days on social, and then we hit one email blast, and that one email will be responsible for 90% of our results. So use social as a tool to interact, to be social, to engage with your community, to push them back to your website and your newsletter and your offers. But it's a complement. Email is going to be your number one thing. So don't, and remember that the algorithm is controlling how much of your posts are getting exposed to, you might have 10,000 followers, but any post is really only going to be reaching, 10% if you're lucky.
Right. And so what we've been doing a lot more now, you may have noticed, is we're trying to, have people sign up for my newsletter. So we're offering a lot of things that bring them back to the newsletter, because we realize the newsletter is the best way to reach people, and social media is a great way to engage in conversation. So you introduce them to your work, and newsletter is where you're sharing more about what you're doing.
Question about does the publisher get the distribution into the stores like Barnes and Nobles and airports? How do they handle the positioning on the shelves?
So the publisher works with the bookstores to get the distribution. If you have a publisher that's willing to do that and they're good at doing that. Again, not every one of my books is on shelves in a massive way. You might have one book in one store. So they're always trying to sell when a new book comes out to the bookstore. As I said, Barnes and Noble did not carry my book initially. But as I got out there and I went from city to city, sharing the message in the books, people started going in the store asking for my books, and that helped it get in there. The other key was when I would have events, a public event, I would bring Barnes and Noble to the event to sell books for me. I wasn't making money off the books. I was having Barnes and Noble sell. And by being there and doing that, they sold maybe 500 books. They were thrilled. They were ecstatic. They then brought the book in their store, and another store did it as well. And then you get into the system. And once you get in the system, it starts to drive more sales. So that's how that works in bookstores. Airports are a whole different animal. You have to pay for placement in the airports. And so any book that you see in an airport, you're paying a lot of money to be in the airports. But airports are a great, great distribution channel to promote your books. I've had so many people say, I found your book in an airport. And if it leads to one speaking engagement, it's worth the investment. But my publisher won't even pay for that. Like I would literally have to pay for that myself if I want to be in airport. So I've done it a few times and it's been worth it, but it's definitely an investment to do that. Between $5,000 and $20,000 a month to put a book in an airport, just for placement in there. But again, it does get a lot of eyeballs when you're doing that, especially travels. Not now. Now, if you had invested in that now, would have been a good thing. So funny because not funny, but I had, spoke to Hudson, which owns all the airports. So I did a talk to that company. They put my books in their stores, and this happened all literally as the contract ended. That's when COVID hit in March. So, but airports are a great way to get distribution for your books. Bookstores, with less people shopping in bookstores, it's harder and harder these days to obviously get in there and also get noticed. That's why your email marketing, that's why your social media following, that's why you're speaking and promoting all of your products and books while you're speaking. That's why it's so important to be out there doing the work, getting the following. Nothing replaces you getting out there speaking everywhere and anywhere. Chamber of Commerce events, women's groups, book clubs, high schools, colleges, alumni groups, you name it. You put together your core topic, make it a really cool topic, something that's catchy. You put together a one-page overview. You put together a nice book cover there. You start sharing that out there. You're gonna get some acceptances. You're gonna get some offers. Not a lot. I still have emails that I've kept from 2003 and 4 and 5, even 6. Hey, I'm John Gordon. I'd love to come speak to your company, and no responses off of hundreds of them, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no responses. But I was hustling and I was putting it out there, and it was amazing that a lot came in. By me doing that and putting it out there, I would get requests elsewhere and they would come in other ways. It's like once you put it out there, somehow it just starts to come back to you in other ways. But I've done this with a lot of friends and a lot of people on our team, and I've seen them grow their business. I've seen them do it this way, one at a time, which leads to the next one, which leads to the next one. And every time you give a talk, you post it on social media. You post the picture of you, especially if you're beginning on social media, even a little video clip. Doesn't have to be a massive stage, but even, hey, and loved speaking to so-and-so today. It was, exciting. I had a blast. Love talking about this, and this. And someone will see that, and you might get a request to speak one more. So one leads to the next, which leads to the next.
Yeah, that's super important. So John, since we kind of transitioned into speaking there, what are some tips? I mean, other than, early on, everything was like free. We would barter things a lot of times too, where like John would go to speak to get reps, but we would do things like ask the host for the email addresses of all the attendees so that we could add them to John's newsletter. Or we would say, okay, if you can't pay a speaking fee, maybe you can buy books for the attendees or something. There's always leverage, that you can get for things. So if you're early on and starting out, the quantity of your speaking is super important so that you can be everywhere, so you can get exposure, you can get reps, you can get better, but look for the opportunity to leverage it too, even if it's just something, basic. What
And
other tips do you have, John, for?
I did 80 free talks initially, you should know too. 80 free talks initially to get out there and just to do the work. And then initially I was $500 a talk. And then I remember saying, okay, I'm now $1,000 a talk. And I was like, okay, I'm 1,500. I'm going up to 2,500. I literally,
Wait, because here's the thing. I'm in the background going, why? Wait, why are we raising the fee? Well, you're not ready yet, John. And John's like, trust me, we're good. We're going. So if you're wondering when do you raise the fee, you just do it.
Yeah, and then you just see what happens with demand, but I started getting a little busier at 1,000. I'm like, all right, I'm going to try 2,500, see if I can get that as a speaker, and now I'm $40,000 for a keynote. And I know some of you just went, whoa, but yes, $40,000 for an hour keynote. And I do pro bono work with nonprofits where I don't charge at all. So every year I do a number of events of nonprofit events. But how do I make my living? As a speaker, it's the big companies and the big conferences that will bring me in. But that was years in the making. Early on, I wanted the big stage. I have to tell you this. And I kept on wanting the big stage and I wasn't ready for the big stage. And I got on a couple of big stages really early on and I didn't do very well. Publix was one of them. All their managers, they bought the energy bus for like 1,800 managers, which was awesome. Colin Powell was the speaker the year before. Then they had me. And I just felt, I believe, overwhelmed by the moment. They said I had great energy, which was good. But I look back on it, I didn't think I was very good. And so just know that it's a process and it's a journey. And you just keep getting better and better as you go along. You're not going to be great early on. Don't let that stop you. My wife will tell you, I was like, John, you were speaking, you weren't even good, but you were just out there doing it. And I was willing to just get out there and do it. You have to live with no fear. It's like, come on, you don't want to go through your life with no regrets, right? You don't want to have regrets. You want to look back and say, you know what? I went for it. I did it. And I'm excited about that. And that's how you want to really think about your life as you move forward.
Yeah. And there were many times, guys, like early on, John's confident now, but I remember us being at engagements and right before he's going up on stage, the nerves were kicking in. Like if I've learned anything from John Gordon, or two things really from him over the 20 years that we've worked together, simple actions makes all the difference. Like all these strategies we can talk about are great, but if you don't start doing the one thing every day to make some movement forward, it doesn't matter. But two, it's like, do it anyways. The fear, he would have fear before getting on stage, but he would do it anyways. I saw him beforehand and he's, just kind of like not panic, but he's, very nervous, but he would get on stage and what, John, 10 seconds in, then you find your groove and you're on.
And by the way, if you are nervous, here's a little tip beforehand. If you are nervous, what you do is you think about the difference you want to make. And so it's not about you. It's about how can I impact them? Your purpose is greater than what they think of you. And so you're not worried about what they think of you in your talk. You're thinking, how can I make a difference? And if you don't share this message, then you can't impact the people who are listening. So you have an obligation to actually share it. So that's something that helps me, is to actually think about how I can make a difference. It's about them, not me. The other part of nerves is deep breathing, and then give yourself a little time to start with a joke or a story, something you're really comfortable with as you're beginning. And so allow yourself to get into the groove and the flow and then begin from there. Don't think you have to jump in right away. Do something that makes you feel comfortable initially, so that way you can then take that calm and that energy and then share it with the people listening. And that's helpful as well. In terms of speaking, always remember this: principle, story, application. This is gold right here. This is like $1 million advice right here. Principle, story, application. When you're giving a talk, you want to share the principle, then you want to tell a story, and then how it applies to them. So if you're giving a talk of 30 minutes, you might share 3 principles, 3 really cool stories, and then applications, how it applies. And that creates a great structure and flow to your talk. You may want to give one big story and then share some principles along the way, but for me, I structure my talks with, I want to share with you 5 principles today on positive leadership, on how to be a great leader. And so I share the first one, principle, tell a story, and then application. And that's how we remember most. We remember through stories. When you're speaking, the audience, they don't remember all the stats. They don't remember a lot of the details. They remember the stories that you tell. Years later, they'll remember your stories. And so key is to find really good stories and hear other speakers tell their stories. And as you hear them tell their stories, think of like your own that actually apply or relate to the one they're telling. Because I'll hear someone tell a story like, oh, I had this happen to me. I could actually tell mine similar to that, but in my own way. And then you create your own story based on maybe a great story you heard.
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions so far? We've got a few comments and questions, but anybody want to unmute and come on and ask a question about writing or speaking and kind of the brand aspect of this? It's all the branding. If you're hearing the common thread here, that's all relevant to branding. The big idea is that you know what you stand for, you know where you want to go, and you're figuring that out along the way, and you're doing all these pieces to support it.
I want to add to that, by the way, positivity, I realized was my brand. So not right away, though. I have to tell you, even after Energy Bus, I wasn't clear on that. And then I wrote No Complaining Rule. I wrote Training Camp, Shark and Goldfish, which was positive ways to thrive during waves of change, and a couple more books. And after that, I finally came to a clear decision, like, what is my core brand? What's my core message? What's my core purpose? And I realized it was positivity. And that's when positive leadership, power of a positive team, positive university, all that started to grow after that, because I realized that's my core brand. So it didn't happen right away, but that's why I say it's very important to get clear on what your core message and brand you want. Now, it may change. You may change. I went from energy addict to thankfully, we have some pictures of me in my energy addict shirts. I moved from that to more positivity, knowing that was my core thing, not physical and health and wellness. Although I like talking about that, and sometimes I'll post on that. I realize that's not my core message. How did I come to realize this? What was I most energized when I talked? That's when I realized what I was most excited about, what my core message was. When I talked about health and wellness, I felt like I was their mom trying to tell them what to do: sleep, eat, exercise. It was sort of draining. When I talked about positivity, I felt uplifted, energized. And so think about what your core message is and what's most exciting for you to talk about. And that's a good indication of what you really enjoy talking about. And again, I think that's really helpful to think about that, because it doesn't happen right away and you don't necessarily develop it right away. But the sooner you develop it, the more you can focus on it. I interviewed Josh Lichtner yesterday for a podcast, and he is the innovation expert, and he has such a clear brand on innovation, and that's what he focuses on. That's what he lives. That's what he does, and it like oozes out of him. And the interview is like all about like innovation. And so you talk to someone like that, you get a very clear indication that's his brand, and he's the top innovation speaker, and there's a reason why. So that's why I say it must like really like it comes out of your pores in terms of the brand you want to share and what you're excited about talking about.
Hey, John, I have a comment. I've
Only
followed
questions, Ron. Only questions.
the a positive thing that you honest. That's one of the things that why you're such a great leader and why you all do what you do. I met you at an NBA thing where you were talking to NBA coaches, and our friend Brendan Sir got me in there to listen to you. And you gave all this good talk, and one of these NBA coaches says, "Okay, Mr. Energy Bus guy, what's your problem in life? What's wrong with your situation?" And you were very honest. You said, "I travel too much." And in that 6 years or 7 years or 5 years, whatever that was, you all reinvented your business to where you're making a difference with more people without traveling as much. So your honesty really comes through. And that's what you're really telling people today. Be honest, be you.
Great, Ron. Great thought on that. I love that you said that in terms of for everyone else. Your authenticity is king. Like your brand has to be authentic to who you are. I'm glad you shared that, Ron. Like, who are you? And being authentic and real and vulnerable, I believe, is a really key part of building a great brand. Yeah. Thanks, Ron, for saying that. Daniel, there's some chat 2 questions, Daniel, if you want to look through some of those, and then also we can take them on in terms of
Yeah, we got a couple hand raised too. Deborah, you go first, and then we'll jump into Julie
Okay.
and Rob.
Well, first of all, John, I just want to say I first bought your book after seeing it advertised on the back of a pharmaceutical magazine that we used to be able to get. I will be retiring on Monday of next week after 35 years plus as a sales training motivational trainer. And your book is what got me to where I am today. And as a result, you actually came to Bear Healthcare and you were our keynote speaker, and everybody got the book. Every time I've had a training class in the last 35 years, nobody was allowed into that class unless they had their ticket that I printed from the book. And only recently, nobody wants me to go. They keep extending my date. Yeah, well, I'm ready to move on, and that's why I'm here. Recently, I was actually asked from my vice president, who is also a very big fan of yours, if I would address their leadership team, which goes from Germany. It's a global team. And I only had a few minutes in the opening and the close, and I took from the Positivity of Leadership book. My understanding is the assignment to each of the 150 people on this call they had to go buy the book. So they were just thrilled. And this is so helpful because my word for the year, I still do that as well, is difference. And it begins here. So I just wanted to say thank you. And I'm loving seeing all these other folks that I never even knew were out there. So when you're stuck in New Jersey during a pandemic, trust me, this is so refreshing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate you, Deborah. Thanks so much. Yeah, we have a lot of great people on here for sure. No doubt about it. Who has a question about publishing, branding, speaking?
Rob Brown, did you have one?
Yeah. Hey, John, Daniel, everybody. Question. I'm 30 days out from my book, new book being released. And so two questions. One is, what would you do for the next 30 days, knowing that you have a book coming out? I think you probably already shared some ideas in here. And the second one is this very selfish question. Would you be willing to read my book? I've written it in what I call the John Gordon style. It's a fable, probably take you 2-3 hours, but I'd love to have your feedback and maybe even a testimonial.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. First, Daniel, why don't you answer him on what you would do for the launch?
Yeah. Is this self or traditional publish, Rob?
Self.
So, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, lots of other things that, you would be doing leading up to that. But for the next 30 days, I mean, you're looking for anything that you can do to compound the word. So if you don't have any sort of launch team or something like that, even if you don't have a platform yet, if you've got, the average person, I forget what it is, has 100 friends on Facebook, so you put it out there that you're going to allow some people to review the book for free if they're willing to help you spread the word about it. Because the idea that a lot of authors fall trap into, especially early authors or new authors, is that they try to sell the book instead of getting, initially, instead of trying to build a following around the book. So if you can you might think it's kind of counterintuitive. You might think, I don't want to give away 30 copies of the book for them to read it, but those 30 people could be responsible for you selling 100 copies. You know what I mean? I mean, and I can email you a few things, Rob. If you shoot me an email at daniel@johngordon.com, I can send you a few other ideas, but or in the Facebook group. If that's a big thing. It's getting more people to be proponents for your voice.
And Rob, I would definitely give those books away. We did that. We've always given books away at every launch, and you give it to influencers, you send it to people, and doing that gets the book out there. And not everyone has time to read it, but you put it out there to as many people as possible. So that's really key. And also, I would, again, share some free chapters. I would promote the book, and don't be shy about promoting it on social media. I have a new book out, very excited. Share the book cover. And to your question about will I read it? I'm glad you asked me that, because I think it's important to give an answer here, because I get about 100 requests to read books every couple weeks. And so it's impossible for me to read all these books. And I remember doing the same when I was a new author. Like for me, it felt like if I can get that well-known author to read my book, then I'll be successful. That's not how it works. The fact, if I read it, doesn't do any good. If I read it and share it, yes, that will help. But if I read it, that necessarily doesn't help. Ken Blanchard, I would send my books to, and didn't really read them early on. Only when I did the work and got out there and put it out there, did I start reaching the influencers. The influencers came later. I had to reach so many other people first along the way. Here's a stack of books that I have right now, literally, that are on my shelf. So like you asked me to read yours, I still have to read those, plus the other 100 that have requested me to read a book. So it's hard for me to read everybody's book that asks, right? But you've got to find your audience. You've got to find your tribe. You got to find the people who are going to gravitate towards your work, and you put it out there. And asking me is great. You can send it my way, sure. I'll look at it. Will I read it? Probably not right now, but I will look at it. I want to be honest, but I will look at it. But in that case, get your tribe, find your tribe, put out to as many people as possible, and know that you build the audience, and then the influencers will come to you. But you got to do a lot of work early on along the way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just figured it would be silly not to ask.
I'm glad you asked. No, I'm totally glad you asked. I appreciate it. And that definitely send it my way. But again, I literally could show you a stack of books that I got last week that people sent to my office.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you want to help everyone. You want to support everyone's book. I love that you wrote one. I think it's awesome. Like, you want to support people in their dreams. It comes to a point where it's overwhelming for me as a human being to be hit with so many different things and then still do my work, right? That's hard too. But I appreciate you asking. I definitely will look at it.
Appreciate it, John.
Other questions?
Julie, did you have a quick one?
Sure. Hey, John, I wanted to ask you how you decide when you have some core principles in your head, i.e. the energy bus. How do you decide between doing a fable, turning that into fiction versus just sharing, these are my 10 ideas about how to create positive energy in a nonfiction format? How do you decide?
That's just a gut decision. It's a spiritual decision. The garden was going to be called Identity. It was going to be a how-to book. And just as I started writing it, I had a vision for the garden and a garden. And I knew right then and then I was supposed to write as a fable. So for me, though, I want to write more fables going forward again. So I'm getting energized to do that and excited about working in that capacity. I love the timelessness of a fable. And so for me, that's what I love. But I think you just have to decide how you want to write the book and what style you write best with.
That was another question that was in earlier that kind of stuck with me. And I don't recall who asked it. It might have been Jeff. But how do you know if a book is a good book or not?
I think you read it, you share it with friends and family. That still may not determine it. My brother read The Energy Bus. He's like, yeah, it's okay. My wife read it. She thought, yeah, it's good. Didn't think it was that great. My agent said, oh, it's a cute little book. We didn't know it was going to take off like it did. So that's not always the indicator. You just never know. After I've written books, I've literally thought, I like it, but it's okay. There are books that are a lot better than I thought they were when I look back. Then I'll go back and read them years later. I'm like, wow, this is actually really good. Did I write this? So it's interesting how you think something's good or bad. It's so subjective. So how do I know if it's a good book? It's a good book if you are passionate about the message and you want to share it and you're excited about it and you put it out there. Then the marketplace and other people will tell if it's good to them. But if you like it and you're happy with putting it out there, and that's all that matters initially.
And I think it's important to remember that not every book is for every person. So don't write trying to think your book is for everyone, because that is setting yourself up for massive failure. And that goes in the same as for branding too. If you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. It's important, especially when you're developing a brand, the more niche you can go and more defined and something that you can be known for, as you grow and you get more influence and exposure, then you can speak on other topics that may be, something that you're migrating into, or, a subtopic that you have kind of remotely wanted to talk about, but you become known for the core thing first.
And I think that's important what Daniel just said, be known for something. And so before you do your second book or your third book, be known for this first book that you want to build a brand around. Now, your first book may come out and may not do well. Your second book may not do great, but your third book may be your core brand and your perfect message. And that happens too. So let the process unfold, but keep evaluating along the way as you're moving forward based on what we talked about here. Early on, as I said, and we talked about, I mean, there were so many events that I did early on. I went down to South Florida, and it was supposed to be a big event. I got there and the event was canceled. So I drove all the way there. It was canceled and had to drive all the way back. And it didn't even tell me that. And there were so many things along the way that just didn't work out, didn't happen. Books I thought I was going to write that I didn't. And, it's all a journey and a process along the way. But for that first book, just write what you're passionate about. I'm not saying it's your end all be all book, but just try to write that first one. Then it becomes easier to write the next one.
So any other questions? Something we didn't cover? Beth?
I have a question.
Hey, Jeff.
So when you started your business, it was about writing, and then the writing turned into the books, and then the business turned into coaching and leadership and the other aspects of the business that you have. What if your business is coaching or consulting, and that's the purpose of the business, and you don't write? So how important is, or how, like the daily positive or the weekly newsletter or the little blogs and things, to just start writing to grow your business? And I mean, it may not even be that I need to write a book, but so my business is consultative coaching and getting in there and working on the things that I want to work on in the business. So how important is the daily drip or the monthly drip or the writing around trying to develop that business?
Yeah, Jeff, I would write a book that actually supports your consultant, that identifies, that shares your process, that shares your core message, your core mission of your consulting, how you do things, or something along those lines, because that book is a good calling card for you to help promote your consulting business and coaching business. So if I was a coach and that was my livelihood, I would write a book about my coaching process. Tammy, who works with us, Metheny, I never pronounce her last name right. It's Metheny. She's has the Confident Athlete, and she has different books that she's writing promoting that tied to her coaching and what she does and how she does it. And it's a really great brand builder for her business. So that's what I would do. I would write definitely a book to help you promote your consulting. That's your calling card. If you're not the writer, then you find a ghostwriter who can write it with you. And that's okay to find someone to help you write it. And many people use ghostwriters. I don't. I want to be honest. People always ask me if I have a ghostwriter. I write all my books. I get that asked so much. Do you have a ghostwriter, John? I must not look smart enough to write a book, but I definitely do write my books. There's a great question here that she's asked several times, and I want to, she said she's a dissertation student. She's having writer's block. And when you don't feel like writing or having writer's block. And so the key there is to still sit there at the computer. I write at a computer. So that's where I write. I sit there and I type on using a Word document. So you sit there. If that is how you write, or you write with a pen and paper, you just make the time to write, and you sit there every day at the same time every day. You just show up and you're open to what comes. Or you take a walk, clear your mind, come back, and then sit down and write. And then you just do it. The other part is writer's block. The best way to overcome writer's block, I wrote about this in The Carpenter because I had it. First time, never had it before, but I had it for The Carpenter, full of fear. I was worried I was going to write a piece of junk. And I woke up with this mindset that love casts out fear. And if I just love the process of writing, I will love what it produces. So I got to love the process. I got to love the reader. That's what I did with the energy bus. I said, I got to get back to that kind of feeling, not worrying about the outcome. Just write. Don't worry about deadlines. Don't worry about, making anyone happy. Just write what you want to write and love the reader and love the process. And then I wrote from there. And so for you, what are you excited about with your dissertation? Let that love of your dissertation, of the topic that you're studying, excite you, motivate you, inspire you to write something. And every day, focus on that process, not all the other stuff and the expectations that come with it. Hope that helps.
Beth, did you have a question?
Oh,
Yeah, you're unmuted. You're good.
yes. So the reason that I'm here with my husband, Ron, is he's written a book that's successful.
Yes.
He has a sequel to that book that the same publisher gave him an advance to write. And so I am frustrated in the fact, like you said, that they don't market, but it's like they advance you the money. I would think they would want to make the money back when they give you a large sum of money to write a book. I guess I feel like they have access to bookstores and all those other things that maybe we don't, or I guess try to figure out how to get into that, so to speak. I mean, yes, I can do social media and emails, and I'm learning here today that that is probably something you and I need to take more control of. But I guess it was wrong for us to assume that you have a successful book, you have a second book that tells the rest of the story, so you went with the same publisher. Like, for example, you have 23 books.
Right.
I guess you're saying you've done them all through the same publisher. So you've developed a good relationship. Ron has 2 more manuscripts that he's now pulled out. I think COVID has kind of changed speaking and how we are doing things. Like, we're here with Zoom today, but I guess we're trying to decide on the 2 manuscripts that he's revisiting. Do we continue going with a publisher? Or is somebody that's established that, or do we publish it ourselves?
Well, let me just.
There's actually a great hybrid model. There's a great hybrid model called Ben Bella, and my publisher, who was at Wiley, is now with Ben Bella, and it's basically a hybrid model where it's a 50%, 50-50 kind of split, where they do all the publishing, and then you go out and you do the book. There's no advance, but they take care of everything, but you're making 50% royalties of the books. That might be a good fit for you too. As I said, your book, Ron's book, is one of my favorite books of all time, most powerful books of all time. I have heard many nightmare stories about publishers that do this. And I experienced this with a publisher, my first 2 books, The Energy Addict and the 10-minute energy solution, which sell about 100 copies a year. And so I had those 2 books, right, when I was in that kind of mode, and that publisher wouldn't even let me pick the cover. And so I was really frustrated with the cover. I wanted a new cover. They said no. And then when they came back with the Energy Bus, they had first right of refusal. So they rejected the book. And I was like, thank you. I was actually happy they rejected. So that then made it possible to go see other publishers. It's so funny because years later, this publisher came to me and wanted to then publish, new books and to work with them. I'm like, no, why would I want to work with you? Because that's how they are. There's so many publishers that are like that. I've heard so many nightmare stories, really big advances, successful authors that have nightmare experiences. And so just like anything, picking your partner is essential. So for this new book, the book you have out, the sequel, I would really promote that book as much as you can, using the movie, which again, incredible movie, using the movie, the previous book, and get the rest of the story, find out how it ends, and really create a lot of marketing yourself on that end. Go back to hustling. I'm still hustling to this day, and you have to, right? And then from there with the 2 manuscripts, find a new publisher that you really want to work with, that you support, that supports you, and that you find really great energy with, and go that route, because you're not alone. This is a very common thing, and you think you're alone, but now that you probably heard me say that, I hear this from so many people, so many publishers. It's like they don't even know how to sell books, and that's their business.
That you have 23 out there. And so I'm thinking, are you self-publishing? Because you've probably learned so much on how to do book covers, how to do editing, how to market, so, you say you make more per book by self-publishing.
Yep.
Do you get to a point where you don't really need the publisher if they're just printing, but then they're only going to give you $1 to $3? So
right. In the future, I thought about that. In the future, I may, I have a few more books I'm going to do with Wiley, and then, you know, maybe 4 or 5 more books I have with them. And after that, I may evaluate, do I do, you know, go on my own, or do I continue working with them? So
It's already marketing.
yeah, but for me, again, it's always been about, like, I've never really focused on the money. I really like having the partnership and the infrastructure that we all do together, and we really work well together. So from there, it's like, if you have a system and your goal is to make a difference and get the books out there, then you're just going to stick with that structure, you know?
The good news is you have a partnership. I can't even get them on the phone. They've sold over 2 million of my books, or I've sold over 2 million of the books. I can't get them on the phone. We were a #1 New York Times bestseller, and they will not return a phone call to me or email.
I think this is so great for everyone to hear, because, like, everyone thinks you're going to, like, you have your success, which I know you've had, right? And it's crazy. And yet it's common. It's unbelievable, the stories I hear.
And I love the fact that you are continuing to publish and grow. And so I look up and I said, well, let's get on with John and see what we should do. I mean, I like a launch team. I've never even heard of a launch team. I don't know that sounds.
See, I would literally relaunch your book. I would relaunch the book with a launch team. Julie's nodding, she likes that idea. I would relaunch the sequel, and I would get a launch team with the audience you developed with the movie success, with the book, and say, join our launch team for the sequel, and relaunch the book with a launch team.
Do you offer launch teams? Did I hear something about?
We don't, but I mean, we do that. And the way you do a launch team is you go out to your, Daniel could speak about it, but you go out to your fan base. And then from there, you ask if they want to join your launch team, and you'll have people that say, yeah, I want to help join the launch team and promote the book. And Daniel can tell you more about that.
Yeah, I've got Beth, I've got a doc that kind of outlines it. If you want to email me, daniel@johngordon.com, I'll forward that over to you. It'll help.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Daniel is known as the foremost expert on launch teams in the publishing industry.
Okay,
Tony Robbins has him do it, and others as well. He's just he's trying not to do too many these days, because
My word is less for
we have a mission that we're on to do work and make a difference. So he's not taking on as many.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? I'm willing to go a little bit longer, since we have people that have questions, and I don't want to shut this off without asking if you have one that I haven't answered.
Hey, John, I have a question. And first of all, this is a huge encouragement. You've used the word journey a couple of times, and I know people on the call are probably in different parts of the journey in writing their book. And so it's been an encouragement to me, because as you talked about things at the beginning of, creating a website, creating social media, all of those things. So, I've self-published, I've created the websites, all of those things, and promoting and getting that message out there. So my question to you is, in a COVID world, obviously there's huge opportunities like we're on today, but what are ways that we can open up the door? All the others work has been done up to this point. Now it's, how do I get in front of more people to share that message that's ready to go?
Send the book out to people. Send the book out to more people, more influencers. And I know people who do that, and it works. Send the book with a letter. Love to speak to your team. Love to speak to your organization. If I can help you in any way, let me know. So just keep on sending the book out. It is the flywheel effect. It is the one person at a time. It is the 10,000 hour rule, right? You got to just do the work, put it out there. 10 years to become an overnight success. And so you just got to keep doing it. Keep sticking with it. You may not get success right away. You might not get a response for 100 people, 100 books you send out. Keep putting it out there. Keep sending it. And the more you do, you got to get one person on your bus, then you get another, then you get another, then you get another. You got to stay the course over time.
Let me add just a little tactical thing in there. Piggyback on others or partner with others. So raise your hand if you're familiar with our Positive Summit. Anybody? Okay. So you'll notice on that, Chad, like we bring in other speakers. Now, obviously John's got influence, so we can have other speakers like John Maxwell and others, who are influential. You might not have that same connection right now, but you may have a connection with 3 or 4 other speakers who might be a little further ahead than you. And you guys do something together. They promote it as well. You gain an email list or additional exposure because of that. So you're kind of creating synergy with others and feeding off of that unified audience so that you can grow your list, and you just keep repeating those things, getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
And people have used podcast is a great way to do that as well. So having a podcast, Chip Baker's done a great job, with a podcast, and you interview people, you get to know them, you develop a relationship, and you grow your audience that way. So I've seen a lot of people use podcasts as a way to develop great relationships, connect with other authors. They have them on the show. And then from there, you're able to grow your brand. So podcast seems to be the new way a lot of people are doing that. We should definitely make sure that we mention that. So podcast is key.
And it's so much of an encouragement for me because I've done that. I have a podcast now. I have all these different sources. So I'm doing all those things. The important thing is to stay the course and keep doing those things. And I think that's, an important thing for me because I'm at a totally different level than maybe some other people who are just starting to get the ideas to write the book.
Yep. And I've seen people at different levels, Alan Stein, when he started to where he is now, he was a basketball clinic guy and now he's growing. David Nurse, who's a young man who I really like. He's, 31, 32 years old, basketball skills guy, worked with NBA teams, but now he wrote his first book, Pivot and Go. And now he's developing his brand and doing a podcast and out there speaking, but he's, got a gig. Then he got another one, next month. That's how I started. I had one engagement here, one engagement there, then another engagement. Now it's many a week, but over time, the more you do it, the more speaking you get. That's what I love about this work, is because the more you do it over time, you will get older, but as you get older, you can become more successful as you get older, not less, where a lot of jobs is the other way around. Ken Blanchard is as busy as ever, and he's 80 years old, because he's been doing it so long. Tom Flick is one of the busiest people I know, and Tom Flick has done a ton of engagements every year, and I think he's 60 now. And again, he's done a lot of engagement, but he keeps on getting more and more because the more you do, the more you get referred. So you just have to continue to do the work. I've said it a number of times, and I think it's important that I'm saying it though, because I think we think you could do all these different great strategies and they are all important, but just showing up and doing the work every day and putting it out there is key.
Yeah, and it's not going to happen, like for Chad and others, it's not going to happen overnight. But you do have to be smart. Like, you don't want to continue doing the same thing, expecting different results for, 2 years. And you're like, just sticking to it. You got to be smart. You need to pay attention to what's happening. Reverse engineer things too. Like when you see somebody else doing, like if you see somebody doing a webinar, sign up for it. But don't just sign up to attend and participate. Pay attention to all the things they do with it. What emails do they send you? How do they position things? You look at what they're doing so that you can reverse engineer it for yourself
and build it according to your brand, not theirs.
Right.
Copycats never work. What's more valuable, a masterpiece, an original, or a replica? So you don't want to be a replica. You want to find out what's unique to you and what causes you to stand out. Since the Energy Bus came out, other people have tried to do similar books to the Energy Bus, and you can tell they're just knockoffs, right? You have to do something that's unique. When I saw Ken Blanchard's books, I made an intentional decision. No, I can't follow Ken. He's Ken. I got to do something unique to me. What is that? I don't know. And, I didn't know at the time. And then I prayed, and then the Energy Bus came. It was a gift. I mean, I'm going to say it was a gift from God. I can't take credit from it. And I believe that we all have a message we're meant to share. And that was my core message that I was meant to share. And I'm thankful I get to do it. But you got to find your core message that you're meant to share. And when you do, that's when you blossom. Any other questions, Daniel, that we didn't answer, or topics that we're going to need to cover that we didn't cover? Branding, speaking, writing.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you find, or are you concerned anything about what you write may be offensive to someone? Seems like nowadays people take offense at all kinds of things because they look at it very differently. And do you worry about that, or just say, hey, this is what the Lord's put on my heart, so this is what I'm going with? Yeah,
I'm not worried about what people think. I can't worry about that. So I just have to write what I feel called to write. I think it's important to, you don't want to, in my mind, curse or be offensive. But if someone finds something offensive that I don't find offensive, I can't control that. And so, for me, it's about writing what I feel I'm meant to write and writing that. So yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Anybody else?
And when you write, you have to say this: I'm not for everyone. This is not for everyone. your work has to find the audience that it's meant to find, but it's not for everyone. And you have to be okay with that. If you go on reviews on Amazon, you'll see that not everyone loves the energy bus, right? And so that's okay, you know, and not everyone's going to love it. Early on, it really bothered me when I would see these negative reviews, but over time, there were more and more positive reviews. Early on, there were a lot more negative than positive, actually. Then things shifted somehow. Positivity wasn't very popular then, and now a lot of people talk about it. Positive energy was something that people didn't talk about. So it actually was a time that it was ahead of its time in many ways. And now there's a lot of positivity around it. So that's why you can't worry about what people are saying. So there's gonna be some people that don't like it. So my motto is this: I'm not here for someone else to define me. I'm here for God to refine me to be what he wants me to be instead of what someone else says I am. And that's how I go through life. Randy.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been amazing. So I have a question for a shy person on the call that is too shy to speak up and go on camera. This is a person who is starting to grow an online Facebook-based health and wellness platform. And so the motivation is motivation and inspiration regarding health and fitness and how, you know, self-care, and has grown her Facebook group from 0 to about 380 people right now. So she's got some audience and has the ability to grow. Has done all summer, did free workouts so that this fitness group can stay healthy during the pandemic, and is now looking to really expand and make this her primary business. So the question is, a book, not a book, a newsletter, what does she write about? You know, how do you, in the very early stages like this, when you've got the basis of a brand, how do you expand that out?
Come up with a cool name for the brand. If she has it, great. What is that brand? Then start a newsletter that supplements and also feeds into the Facebook and also gets people from Facebook to go to the newsletter. So start sharing that newsletter out there. And then from there, start putting some videos on the Facebook. Obviously, she may already be doing that. That gets people there. And then just continue to grow that brand in terms of her offerings. She may then want to create a fitness course, as a lot of people do. So you create a fitness course that she can then sell, that people could buy an, you know, on-demand video course as well. And that could be something that's, you know, funds her work and also her book. And the book will then also promote the video course. So that could be something that she offers. And I think you just start with that as it grows. Am I missing anything, Daniel? I mean, I think that's something that I would do if I just, you know, started.
How do you come up with ideas for the book, I guess? Where do they come from if you're growing a social media platform? She's got lots of motivation messages. She's a certified trainer. So the question becomes, how do you create, I mean, a newsletter, I think, is pretty easy, right? This is our message for today. This is our fitness for today, our self-care. But the question becomes, regarding a book, is that the newsletter concepts combined, or how does that all come together, I guess?
Well, for the book, it would be about what makes her different. So what makes her brand different? What makes her fitness different? What causes her to stand out from all the other fitness people out there? And that would be what the book is, and the book should be about. So the name, the title, the brand, and what makes it different. Like there was, 7-minute abs, right? Or 6-minute abs or whatever. That was a brand, right? And it did great until someone came out with 5-minute abs. But no, like 6-minute abs is a great thing. And having a brand that's different and unique is a great way to start. The 24-hour this, there's so many cool things, and can't tell you what that should be, but just brainstorm on it, think about it, be open to it. And the more you think about it, it will come.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Hey, John, I have a quick question about email marketing.
Sure.
I have 41 people on my list, and I just have a quick question about new kids on the block. Are you noticing people be more resistant to joining an email list because we all belong to 8 million, right? Because we have gotten the freebies. and they're great. And like, I get the whole concept, but I've noticed some people like leaning towards texting, right? And I get a text from Jess Ekstrom. I don't know. She wrote Chasing the Bright Side.
Yep.
And so like, are you seeing any shift in that or lack of success for us newbies, right? Just thoughts about that.
I think texting is a great platform, a great idea for doing that. I think in today's world, right, with maybe a lot of people not wanting to read a full newsletter, that's also a great strategy as well. I'm glad you brought that up. So I think texting, tweeting, all social media channels, Instagram is a great way to reach people. I still find newsletter is the best, and you'll reach a certain market with that. And you're right, a lot of people are maybe fatigued with all the newsletters they get and they can't read them all. When I was doing it early on, there was no one, right? It was very few. Now it seems like, oh, there's a lot. So you have to cut through the clutter. But if you have an email that cuts through the clutter and provides value, people are going to sign up for it. You know, James Clear with his, habits book, Atomic Habits, he's got a great newsletter. It's very different, very unique. It's more quotes. It's one sentence tips. And people like that. So there's a way to reach today's audience differently. And I think you can do that via newsletter, but also texting is a great idea too.
But also remember that it is it's a law of numbers. So like every medium, there's no 100% saturation. So it's also not just the medium that people will engage with, but the one that they're going to most respond to. So it depends on what you're doing, too. So you'll see a lot of internet marketers, especially, email list is number one priority as it is for us. Texting is like, or to join a text community is like a support of the thing, so you'll get the text for the reminder of the webinar, but email is still the thing that's getting you to sign up for the webinar in the first place.
Okay, thanks. I'll keep paying for the service.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Jeff says there are startups now doing learn and development via text, short blast training sessions via text. Interesting. And maybe we should do text. Daniel, should we do text?
Oh yeah, it's definitely in the cards for us. It's just also one of those things, you guys know, like you're a user. So it's like sometimes people start to exploit the text, and the text is effective now, but it's going to be quickly because everybody's jumping on. You're going to be like, man, the text was just for my people. I don't want everybody, marketing to me on my text. So that'll start getting ignored too. The stats on text from when it started, when a lot of internet marketers, like there's a big outfit called community.com that does a lot of the texting platform. The stats of engagement have when you look at it, it's gone down a lot from when it first launched, just because people are like, I don't want that on my phone. But
repetition is just really key to show up and do the same thing over and over again, whether it's texting, whether it's email, being consistent, I should say. Consistent is important. You build a brand through consistency, and you build trust through consistency. So people expect a newsletter every week and it shows up. People expect their books from me now and they show up. People expect it to be a certain quality. Well, my mission is to make it as good as it can be. And I'm thankful a lot of people say, you know what, my quality has stayed strong. I don't want to be someone who sells out and just does a book to do it. So it's got to be a good book. And so people expect consistency, they expect excellence, they expect value. And if you are providing value and consistency with your brand, you're going to build trust. And over time, you'll bring more and more people to you because of that trust and because of that brand that you have built. And once you're known for something, people will expect that from you to be known from that. And that's important.
If you had a question that hasn't been answered yet here, this is a great reminder that our Facebook group that we have for the coaching community, this is the place. Don't feel there's no silly or stupid question that you can ask, but you can put it in there. John or I will pop in, Julie or others from our team will pop in. We're happy. These are the things, it doesn't even have to be today. It can be anytime you're struggling with something, platform buildings, with your business, anything you're challenged with, put it in there so that we can help you and give you specifics. And then the other members of the community can who might be ahead of you or behind you can learn, or they can contribute as well.
All right, everyone, I hope this was helpful. Hope this was helpful. hopefully you got some great insight, great info. If not, yeah, put in your questions into the Facebook group and we can help answer your questions that you have along the way.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
This
you.
is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.